Hi.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, so what is it like to be back in Montreal?
It feels great. I'm happy to be here. I'm super excited for Sunday. It's kind of bittersweet, right?
Why?
Because I'm only here for a day.
Yeah.
And I'm flying back out to Nashville tomorrow because we have Dynamite and Collision that are taping. And this is the curse of being a professional wrestler, right? This is not the case for Montreal. It is this time.
Right.
But is getting to see all of the nicest places in the world, but for only a few hours,
Right.
if not the hotel, the arena, and then the airport.
Yeah. Such as celebrity Speedball. But okay, so you weren't always Speedball. You started off as Émile Charles Baillargeon-Laberge.
That's right.
And tell me where you're from and where you grew up.
So I'm from Laval,
Yeah.
which I don't know where your listeners are located, but just outside of Montreal.
Of course,
I'm sure
yes.
people here would know. I'm used to having to explain it. But yeah, I'm from Laval. I saw pro wrestling on television for the first time when I was 7 or 8 years old. And me and my brother immediately took our mattresses off of our beds, put them on the floor, and started giving each other suplexes.
Okay,
And
what's a suplex?
Basically, when you throw the guy over your head,
Right.
that's a suplex.
Okay.
You just grab the guy and you throw him.
Okay, at least you put the mattresses on the ground. You weren't completely.
No, we were
reckless.
idiots, but not just.
Thank you for using that word. I didn't want to use that word. You're right.
Yeah, you can. It accurately describes a lot of professional wrestling.
Yeah.
But we saw that and we both decided, yep, we're going to be professional wrestlers. And then I started martial arts a few years later at just about 10 years old. And then when I was 15, my brother, who was 2 years older than me, had already been training to become a professional wrestler. So we both started doing it. And we spent the first several years of our pro wrestling careers just wrestling each other all over Quebec. And he's
Living the dream, no?
well, not quite the dream back then, as we weren't making any money,
Oh,
and
yeah,
it was just not quite hitchhiking, but just hitching rides along with people to go wrestle in Saguenay on Friday, and then back to Montreal on Saturday, and then
Not quite as
Valleyfield on
glamorous as
Sunday.
Nashville.
No, yeah, there was very little glamour back then.
Yeah. Does your brother still wrestle?
He does not. He's a high school teacher currently.
Okay. So you went right directly to pro wrestling. Like you weren't, a high school wrestler or anything else. You always wanted to be combined sort of the physicality with the theatricality, I guess, right?
Yeah, I competed in Taekwondo for several years. Probably did about 10 years of pretty high-level Taekwondo competition as I was doing professional wrestling. And then eventually it came to a point where professional wrestling I was doing enough of it that it wasn't worth it for me to sacrifice a weekend to do a Taekwondo competition and, all the training that goes along with it and the weight cutting and the expenses, you know what I mean? Taekwondo is an amateur sport. There's no money to be made.
Yes,
so when it came to make the choice between I can either spend a few $100s to go compete in Taekwondo or I can actually make some money doing professional wrestling, I went with the professional wrestling.
And so how long have you been Speedball?
I have been Speedball since...
Speedball Mike Bailey, right?
I want to say 2006. There was a writer in Montreal who's now deceased called Michael Ryan, and he wrote a lot online on message boards about wrestling, and he described my style in one of my early matches as bouncing around the ring like a speedball. And then one of the promoters I was working for at the time for the IWS, which is still a great independent promotion running shows in Montreal, was like, Speedball, that's it. That's the name. And Mike Bailey is basically just an English version of my real name, which is Émile Baillargeon. When my grandfather used to play hockey in the US, he was Lucien Baillargeon. He would go by Lou Bailey because it's easier to pronounce, right? And I wanted to be Miles Bailey because Miles is closer to Émile, but there was already a Miles on the show. So I was just like, okay, Mike.
So Speedball, how would you describe your style, though? Because I've seen videos and you're often in the air, quite high up. Like there's flying, basically.
A lot of high flying, martial arts based, right? Like Taekwondo is the base for my professional wrestling. I do a lot of kicks. I try to make my matches look and feel as much like a martial arts movie as possible.
Right. And so how did you develop that? Because the thing with wrestling is that, as you'd say, the Taekwondo, the physical skill, but also that theatricality of making yourself a persona, right? How did you kind of develop that? And who are you on this, in the stage, in the ring?
There's no easy answer for how I developed that. I mean, it took 20 years of trial and error to get to where I am today, but it's slowly, you have to find kind of a middle ground. I still have to do some wrestling. There still has to be some ground-based stuff, some grappling, some headlocks in there in order to be able to perform with the other professional wrestlers. So it's, it was always a give and take of really leaning into my specific skill set, which is acrobatics and martial arts, and then leaning too much into classical pro wrestling and then bring it back, which, right now I'm at a healthy middle, not to get too deep into professional wrestling, but a big part of the art and what's difficult about it is that if you're in cinema, they say that it takes 10 hours of rehearsal for 1 minute of choreography for a fight scene, right? In professional wrestling, I would say that the average that you have to put a match together is about an hour.
Wow.
Right? So if I can explain the art of professional wrestling as clearly as I can, and in order for people to fully understand professional wrestling, what I would want them to see is the full act of it, of two people who will fly into the same city from different countries, very often not even speak the same language, and then they're going to have just about an hour to kind of communicate with each other, and then they're going to separate, meet back in the ring, and perform a flawless 20-minute long choreographed fight scene that is partially improvised, that is good from all angles, that every camera can capture every aspect of it, that feels realistic and is interactive with the audience who watches it, and is adapted to the specific cultural context in which it's performed.
Wow.
That is the art of professional wrestling.
Wow. Okay. I mean, there's a lot there. I feel like we could do 3 hours talking about that. But I guess what I'm wondering is, given all that, what's the state of your adrenaline? Because, okay, it's choreographed, but if you only have an hour, there must be some risks that you're taking, or I don't know. Are there?
There absolutely are risks. However, another thing that's unique about pro wrestling is there is no off season. You will do, up to 5 matches a week. I've done more than that. I've been on tours where I've done, 7 matches in 1 week. And you really have to ride a very, very fine line between, I have to find stunts where I look like I am dying, where it gets a huge reaction from the audience and they're like, oh my God, that's it. It's over. And then, but actually, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm able to do it again the next day and the next day and then every day after that.
Right. So you're going to come back on Sunday after doing it in Nashville. So what can people expect? Let's talk about people who aren't wrestling fans for what's going on Sunday, Redemption.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not familiar with AEW All Elite Wrestling, right? We are where the best wrestle. That is the tagline, the catchphrase, and I think it's very accurate because if you're familiar with the history of professional wrestling, there was sort of one promotion that had the monopoly over professional wrestling for, 20, 30 years, and they were very disconnected from the audience, right? And in the early 2010s, we saw a rise in independent wrestling as social media became available as a tool for smaller promotions to advertise their shows, right? And so there was a whole boom of professional wrestling, of independent wrestling that happened. It wasn't one person's vision. There were no writers. It was just what happened in the ring presented to an audience in a unique setting. And then that all exploded. And at some point in 2019, there was a big hole in the pro wrestling market between great independent wrestling, smaller shows, and the one promotion that was on TV. And that's where Tony Khan, who is the owner of AEW, who's also the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, the NFL team, saw a hole in the market of professional wrestling where there was a middle ground missing of great pro wrestling done for the audience, not sports entertainment, but professional wrestling that happened, and that's where AEW started. So it's very different from what people might be used to if they only have that sort of image of professional wrestling that was historically presented in the media, where this is a lot more based on the performances. It's a lot more based on what the audience wants. The characters and the people that are represented on the show is not one person's vision, right? The world we know is very diverse. And so I think the fact that we have a great diversity of performers on AEW putting on some of the best athletic performances you will ever see is really what makes it special. And that's exactly what you're going to see at the Bell Center on Sunday.
Okay. Well, that's all the time I have with you, but it's super fascinating, a little window into your world. Thanks so much for coming in. And I mean, good luck. Break a leg.
Yeah, thank
No,
you so
don't
much for
break a
having me.
leg.
Don't break a leg. Don't break a leg.
Thanks, Speedball.
Thank you.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
Or the free iHeartRadio app.